A very warm welcome to the participants of the Proteomics Advanced Winter School 2021. Presented by Proteomics Lab, Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Day 10, Metabolomics and AI/ML for Big Data Analysis. Lecture 1, Basics of Metabolomics.
The overview for this presentation is going to be, first I'll talk to you about basics of metabolomics. We will then cover some of the details required for experimental design and considerations for the data analysis. And toward the end, I will briefly give you some case studies about applications of metabolomics. So that is the plan for this lecture. As I mentioned that, metabolomics is very important. May I request everyone to mute themselves? All right. These metabolites, what are these molecules? So these are any molecule which are molecular weight less than 1500 Dalton, and these includes whether you look into peptides or oligonucleotides, different type of sugars, nucleic acid molecules, nucleosides, organic acids, ketones, aldehydes, amines, amino acids, lipids, steroids. You can see huge list of the small molecules, including various type of food additives, toxins, pollutants, drug metabolites. All of these comes under the metabolites, right? So the field of metabolomics actually aims to separate and characterize all of these small molecules in a given cell, tissue, or organism, which comes under the field of metabolomics. Now, unlike proteins, the large molecules, here and proteins, of course, we are only looking at proteins in the proteomics. In this case here, we are looking at variety of molecules, whether they are from the amino acids or lipids or carbohydrates or nucleic acids, or even different type of drug entities. So that makes metabolomics a quite true representation of what is happening inside the physiology, because inside our body, all of these molecules, they're all working in the very orchestrated manner. So they are not just working that DNA is doing something separately at some point and proteins is doing something some other time. Things are all happening simultaneously. So the final product, the functional molecules, which are being formed as a response to many of these metabolic activities, they're all very truly reflected in the metabolomics and in our metabolites. And if we can measure those, that will be very good representation of the true physiology which is happening and governing our normal healthy state or even the disease states. So just overview, which I think you have been seeing this, that we need to look into different level of molecules one by one. But I just want to move from DNA, RNA, proteins now towards the metabolites. And as you can see that many activities which are happening at the gene expression level, RNA metabolism level, or protein activity level, finally they're all going to govern towards the metabolites, and those are going to be reflecting into the phenotype. In fact, there's a new field of phenomics which is actually now developing quite rapidly, which is also that how to look into the metabolites in response to the phenotype, in response to the environment. And also a new field of exposome or exposomics is actually coming forward, which is looking at the exposure of the environment and the impact of that on the metabolites, right? So think about where things are actually leading, right? It's not only anymore genomics or transcriptomics or even proteomics, which has been the flow and the focus of this workshop, but rather there are things are beyond that at the level of metabolomics, phenomics, and exposomics. So all of them are much closer to what is happening and governing our physiological systems. And I hope you appreciate that to really understand any biological system, information at any given omics level is going to be not complete. And of course, a lot of computational scientists, they are working into the area of system biology, where aim is to look into the systems network, how perturbation at the gene level is going to regulate the various protein cascades, or finally the metabolic networks. And all of those fluxes are actually very important, which show the dynamic behavior which is governing the physiological systems of living organism. So metabolome, as I mentioned, is much more closer to the physiological system, and it's very well connected with all type of omics which we have been studying, right? So when we talk about the various small molecules of amino acids, whatever we talk in the proteomics, it's also getting reflected in the metabolome at the amino acids level. Various type of lipids or lipidomics is very important, and they are actually small molecules which are going to be important for giving the shape, form, integrity, and the structure in the cell. Various type of small molecules like sugars, amino acids, ATP, they are all providing the cellular energy sources. Different type of cofactors and signaling molecule, they are also very important at the small molecule and metabolite level. Also all kind of energy transfer system with the AMP, CMP, GMP, TMP, they're all primary constituents of genome and transcriptomes, but these small molecules also being reflected at the metabolome level. And finally, all of these are actually catalyzing the system towards integrated view of the processes happening in any of the physiological contexts. And that's why metabolomics becomes very powerful to provide us the true representation of what is happening in any living system. Now, this picture is very important, which I think I had discussed that with Professor Gary Shidrick from who is the main person of metabolomics field, and the slide is borrowed from him, essentially reflecting that the genome is very static. Proteome shows the dynamic behavior which we have been discussing, but metabolome, you can see the level of fluxes involved, the dynamics involved is much more dynamic. So metabolomics is much more sensitive than the other omics field. Even a single base change can lead to almost 10,000 times change at the metabolites level. So think about a small perturbation here may reflect at the huge level change at the metabolites level. And just to emphasize that why it is important to study metabolomics, because currently many of the clinical assays, in fact more than 95% of the clinical diagnostic assays, they are testing the small molecule. So it's much easier to measure a small molecule, and these tests are very robust and much easier to perform in the clinical settings. And almost 89% of all the known drugs, these are small molecules. So I hope that actually giving you good feel that why one should study metabolomics. And of course, many of the small molecules, they are important cofactors and signaling molecules, work as a signaling molecules for the proteins. So even therefore, proteomics is also very closely interlinked with the metabolomics. And many times you will see many scientists who are working in this area, also given the need that they also already have the instruments available in their labs, the same aspects, they are trying to integrate the proteomics and metabolomics data on the same sample, which because that can be easily done. Just the sample preparation is slightly different, but rest of the workflows remain the same. But as I mentioned, metabolomics being, you can measure those easily, but what you are going to measure is having representation from variety of molecules, whether you are looking at protein, carbohydrates, lipids, even toxics, pollutants, or even drug molecules. So sample preparation becomes very important consideration here, because you don't want any type of contamination in the sample. Of course, you don't want any contamination, any type of sample for any omics analysis, but here it becomes much more apparent because you cannot differentiate that what you are measuring is coming because of the sample or because of the contamination which is part of that sample. So because anything is possible in these sample, you will find sometimes some drug molecules and you have no idea it is coming because of the patient was taking that drug molecule or because of the some issues of the sample collection or any other contamination issues. Clinical samples variability is major challenge in doing metabolomics, unlike proteomics. When we talked about proteomics, and I gave some of you the tips that if you do the protein extraction very quickly from the clinical samples, do digestion of those in solution digestion, prepare peptides, and those peptides dry those and store those in the -80 freezer, those are quite stable. Unlike those, I think the metabolites, metabolomics, it's very dynamic and a lot of fluctuation you can observe. If a sample, just think about a real situation where we want to do the plasma metabolomics or serum metabolomics, and the technicians who are collecting the samples from these patients, they are just keeping it on the room temperature for 2-3 hours. Or versus some other technician who is much more careful is keeping the same sample in a ice box for 3-4 hours. Or some other technician who is much more careful is just as soon as collect the sample, immediately store them in -20 freezer. Now the same sample, think about 3 different type of storage condition. We got room temperature, we got 4 degrees, and we got -20. All these are practically very much possible, and I'm sure depending on the hospitals which you collaborate, depending on the technicians on that day of on the route, they will all determine these type of variability, right? So one thing which you cannot govern is the patient's variability, which is biological variability, but that is we have no control. But the clinical sample collection variability is something really challenge in the metabolomics, and that should be avoided as much as possible. So even if you get a small number of sample, but tightly controlled sample, tightly collected samples can only give us at the end anything significant. Otherwise, you will see a lot of things happening, but they will not show any significant patterns. Now, instrument reproducibility is crucial for any type of omics experiment, but here much more important because small fluctuations will show you a lot of metabolite changes. Retention time drifts are being observed, that has to be corrected. Internal standard to be spiked in the sample so that every sample should have at least some internal standard which comes on a given retention time, and that at least ensures your chromatographic reproducibility and sample preparation reproducibility. And then of course, you are going to then analyze the biological variability. Again, the data analysis workflow, even in proteomics, you may have encountered that we have a variety of software, different workflows involved, and there are different type of strategy which we take for overall quantitative proteomics. For instance, we talked about label-free workflow, which is very different. How to analyze the spectra for the looking at spectral count or relative intensity, versus when you have the tagged molecules like TMT or iTrack, how you're going to analyze the data with the fold changes. Things are quite different, and there are different softwares from the Mascot to the MaxQuant to the Proteome Discoverer, Transproteomic Pipeline. So there is no specific workflow which you can say, I will take my sample like this, process in this manner, analyze with this software, and this will be my final correlation with the metaboanalyst, right? So there will be variety of workflows involved, but still those are quite robust. If I compare that with where we stand right now on the metabolomics field, right? We struggled quite a bit even to get a sense of how to analyze the metabolomics data, given that there are many issues of getting the good libraries here for the metabolites. Unlike the proteomics part, I'm keep comparing proteomics and metabolomics here because they go hand by hand, and we are trying to compare both of them in our same instruments, right? So in proteomics, you have very robust databases. For every protein, at least the genome sequence was done for all the organisms mostly. And even for most of the other organisms, even a lot of protein sequences are there. So therefore, proteomics databases are quite robust. Now think about metabolomics databases, right? These are very challenging because you need to have a library which contains the specific MSMS spectra for each of these molecule, small molecule, and that you can overlay to confirm that is that the right compound or not. So Metlin database is one of the largest available database, but likewise, we don't have still very huge libraries where you can really say that okay, any metabolite which I'm trying to find in my sample, I will overlay that in the database and try to tell exactly what this metabolite is. That is still not possible. So your data search becomes very challenging, and many times you are limited with huge number of good compounds which are all unknown. So you have to then look into how to derive the structure of those, how to identify those compounds differently. Then the issues of different type of sample run, data analysis, all of these things are part of the game, which you have seen it in proteomics. Same remains here in the metabolomics. As I said, software and databases are still major challenging part of metabolomics. Why it has not progressed so much, despite the sample prep, and I will show you, it is so easy that you can just take a sample, extract it methanol or any other organic solvents, and just quickly measure that in the mass spec. Sample prep is very easy, workflow is very easy, but data analysis, software databases are very challenging. They're still not robust. So I hope this gives you some idea that while it is very important to do metabolomics, while the same instrument and workflow of LC-MS can be used for metabolomics, but doing metabolomics in practical sense has not been a very easy reality as of now, given many inherent issues which are part of this, right? So a typical workflow of untargeted metabolomics, or in other words, if you say global metabolomics or discovery metabolomics workflow, that involves taking any type of biological samples. And actually, you can take any biological sample. Even people take tissue sample, make the lysates, extract metabolites from that. But mostly, you will see the plasma or serum sample is most commonly used for metabolomics. But people also use saliva, urine. We recently used nasopharyngeal swab sample. So many type of samples can be analyzed, biological samples, either on the QTOF configurations or on the Orbitrap configurations. Again, the same concepts remain the same. You are going to look for LC-MSMS based separation. So in this case, quadrupole and Orbitrap together. In this case, quadrupole and time of flight together. You have the hybrid MS configuration. You generate the MSMS data and search those with different type of possible softwares. XCMS Online is one of the most highly used, and of course there are many other options as well. And then finally, you're going to look into the data, what are the feature list, how to search the libraries, how to do data annotation. All of these are important and crucial for the workflow of untargeted metabolomics. Now, targeted metabolomics, I would say, is much more powerful. Once you have identified that which metabolites are really important in any given samples, and that's where I showed you that a lot of clinical tests, diagnostic tests, those are based on the targeted metabolomics. So if you prepare quickly a sample with the organic solvent extraction, and you are looking at neonatal disorder, for example, even a lot of neonatal disorder syndromes, they can easily be identified using metabolomics targeted workflows. Likewise, many diseases, there are a lot of FDA approved tests which are looking at specific target metabolites, at which detection time it should come, what the MSMS spectrum should look like, and then you are going to overlay those and you are going to confirm this individual has this problem or not. So that is targeted metabolomics, which is like your targeted proteomics, what we spoke, which was based on the triple quad type of instrument. Same instrument will be used. Here you are going to use, all the time, high flow. So you will use UHPLC, different type of other micro LCs, so that your you can have larger volume of the samples and very quick run of 5 minutes or 3 minutes you can detect those metabolites in the targeted manner. So general workflows involves the sample preparation, data analysis. During data analysis, a lot of things to be done for peak detection, how to group the data in different groups, cluster the peaks across different replicates, how good to align your retention time. Then, of course, finally, you want to do statistical analysis to find out the difference in your control and disease groups. So, Shalini from my group, she has recently done a lot of metabolomics work, and we all struggled quite a bit of optimizing metabolomics, and a huge number of team members during the lockdown. We're all working on doing metabolomics of even COVID samples, and as a process, we really optimized quite a few things and learned what are things to be done, what things not to be done. So I'm going to metabolomics LC-MSMS based approach, where Shalini is going to explain you some of these tips, and then I will take it forward for the case studies.
Sir, may I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
Sir, do we need to have different kind of mass analyzer for metabolomics?
So untargeted, as I said, untargeted is like your proteomics, where any type of hybrid mass spec configurations can be used. Whether you talked about QTOF or we talked about Orbitrap, QE or Fusion, any of those hybrid or tribrid technology can be used. Idea remains the same. You are going to look for the intense precursors. You are going to fragment those to generate MSMS spectra. So therefore, any mass spec configuration which we talked for proteomics are equally applicable here for the metabolomics as well. When we talk about targeted metabolomics, that time triple quadrupole mass spec will be only used, and that is also remains same like targeted proteomics. So again, as I said, why you see lot of people who have mass spec, they also started using metabolomics because instruments and workflow remain the same pretty much, except that the initial sample prep, which is much easier in metabolomics, slightly more complex in proteomics, and the data analysis is much more complex in metabolomics, slightly easier in proteomics. So only beginning and end parts are slightly different. Rest everything remains the same. You do untargeted on the same configuration, you do targeted on the same configuration. All right. So I hope that addresses your query. Let me now give this overview for the workflow of metabolomics.
For giving me this opportunity. And I would like to start with the outline of what all things I'm going to explain you. So starting from the introduction, which Professor Sanjeeva has already given you, I'll start with the sample preparation, instrument run, data analysis, and understanding of pathobiology. So for this part, you'll be needing the small understanding of instrument calibration, sample preparation, optimization, experimental design, and QC check. So before you start with your experiment, you need to know what kind of metabolite you want to extract and which particular sample type you're going to use in order to extract the information out as in the form of metabolites. So once you decide that, you need to understand which kind of column you're going to use and which kind of solvent system you're going to use. So once you have calibrated or once you have understood about the columns and solvent system on the basis of literature search, and then you can go for the instrument calibration. So the instrument calibration is very important, otherwise you'll not be able to understand the shift coming up due to the different solvent or different runs which you are going to have in your experimental plan, because metabolites are highly dynamic and you need to be very careful when you're running these samples. So once your instrument is calibrated, you need to optimize your sample preparation by using various protocols, which might be a part of different literatures, or which might be telling you about different procedures or different steps to keep your metabolites intact. So in this part, for our sample type, we used multiple methods to optimize which method might give us best result or best metabolite coverage within limits of whatever solvent qualities or whatever solvent system we are having. So we were able to find that this particular protocol, that is 1:3 methanol concentration ratio, was giving us the best result, as you can see here on the right hand side. So once this was finalized, we try to check what is the next step for our samples. So the samples specifically for the COVID related samples or any sample which might have potential active pathogen, you need to understand with which method can help you in inactivation of these pathogens. So in the case of SARS-CoV-2, we looked into the different methods, which include physical methods such as heating and the UV radiation, and the chemical-based method, which includes detergent, alcohol-based, or pH-based methodologies. But now there is one more thing which you need to keep it in mind, that the biomolecules which you need at the end of the viral inactivation needs to be intact. So in that case, we chose the alcohol-based methodology, because all the other things or all the other methods would have changed our metabolites or degraded our metabolites, followed by the air drying in the lab. So also there was a VTM, that is viral transmission media, transport media, that is used for collecting these samples. So we had put the two barrier checks for viral inactivation, so that there is no other possibility of having any outbreak due to the sample processing what we were doing. Then comes the sample preparation overview. Here, if you see here that these are the healthy samples, you can have the different cohort of samples, such as healthy samples, COVID positive samples, COVID negative samples. And once you are decided on the type of samples and cohort of samples you have to use for your experimental data, you can take a small aliquot out of each of these samples and pull these together to make a QC pool. This plays actually a very important role, and I'll explain you over the time, and I'll explain you the later slides. But for here, you need to understand that these samples are to be finalized beforehand, so that you can randomize the samples and to have the best quality of data. Then you after the viral inactivation, you go for the chilled methanol based metabolite extraction, which we had optimized for our plasma samples. followed by centrifugation to separate the supernatant out, and then the supernatant is then subjected to the mass spectrometer, and the data was analyzed by using different softwares and packages, followed by the pathway analysis. So here you are looking at the internal standard 1 and 2, which are added at different positions. So I'll explain you as we go ahead. So the major part here is now, so everything now for you is calibrated. The instrument is calibrated, you know which column to use, which solvent to use, how to inactivate the virus, and how to prepare the sample. Now let's go on to the experimental design of the metabolite experiments. So this is a demo part of the experimental design, and here you can see a schematic representation of the same. So here the major three things are the standard mix, quality control samples, that is QC pools, which I showed you that we prepared by pooling all the samples aliquots, and the experimental samples. So the standard mix is something where you have a synthetic or known amino acid, secondary metabolite, or a pool of all these, where you know the exact concentration of these metabolites. This helps in telling you about the instrument performance when you are running the samples or before starting your set. Then comes the QC pool. QC pool, you have to run the QC pool after every 8 to 10 sample runs, which you are doing, so that you are continuously monitoring how the instrument is behaving over a set run. Then followed by the experimental samples. Experimental samples, you need to follow two things. One is the sample randomization. So sample randomization is a very crucial thing. If you are running all the samples in on different days, like healthy on one day, COVID negative on one day, and COVID positive on another, you might not be able to understand what variations the variations what you're getting at the end after data analysis are because of the instrument error, or the error which is introduced because of the sample preparation on different days or run on different days, or whether they are biologically significant alterations. So in that sense, to maintain that part, you need to randomize the samples. And the other important thing is the blank runs. So blank runs depends on individuals, and many people follow different, have different approaches for the blank runs. So you need to check and optimize for your samples, and then you can select whether you want to run the blanks or not. So for our experiment, we had run the blanks after every sample. So next point comes for the internal standards. So internal standards are, so now you know that you already have the standard mix, which you have to run before the experiment starts. Then comes the internal standard, which are very crucial part. As you remember this figure, part of the figure from the earlier slide, here the first represents the internal standard 1 and 2 represents the internal standard 2. So now what these internal standards are. So other samples which were analyzing the run and instrument were checking for the before and after the sample, the exact experimental data run. However, when we are running our experimental sample, even for monitoring that, we need to have some controls, right? So in that part, we use these internal standards. So these internal standards can actually be of 3 different types. So one is metabolites, which are synthetically available with us, but they should be absent from any of the, they should be absent from all the samples what we are going to use in our experimental design set, so that we are not getting confused with the internal standard, adding up the intensities of the biologically relevant metabolites. Then the second type of internal standards can be the isotope labeled metabolites, which are present consistently in your samples. And the third one is the in-house internal standards, which can be thought of as the housekeeping metabolites, which are not changing over the time or over the disease progression. So the internal standard for the in-house one, you can actually look into the literatures for these parts, and you can decide accordingly for your data. Next thing is the sample run on mass spectrometry. There are multiple parameters which you need to optimize before running the samples, but the major two are the gradient optimization and the collision energy check. After optimizing these two, you run the samples, and now we come to the second part of this important QC steps. Those are the after sample run QC checks. So once you are done with the sample run, then you check for the two internal standards which we had added, internal standard 1 and 2, where internal standard 1 was representing the corresponding to the sample preparation variation, whereas internal standard 2 was representing the instrument variation here in the sample runs individually. If you see, these two are the different samples. Also, but you'll be able to see that these are consistent in both the samples. That means it is passing the internal standard criteria. So once that is done, you can go for the further data analysis part. So the data analysis for metabolomics mainly consists of three major parts. One is pre-processing, second is statistical analysis, and third is MSI levels. So for pre-processing, the major idea is to convert the .raw files to .xls file format so that we can understand the data. And for that, there are multiple data packages or tools available with us, out of which we had used the Compound Discoverer software. Once you analyze the file using Compound Discoverer, so for Compound Discoverer, you'll be having more information in the later sessions today. So from there, you'll be able to understand the different parameters which one might use in the CD analysis. Then after doing the CD analysis, this is the kind of P cross N matrix you get, where you get the name, formula of the metabolites, and then the annotation according to the MS2 level information of these and the intensity of these metabolites. But if you see, not all metabolites are having name and not all metabolites are having formula. So how will you understand which metabolite you're talking about when you're analyzing the data? How will you name these? So instead of discarding anything in this beginning, just go and code everything as meta underscore 123 from the very beginning till end. Then the first QC check after this analysis is done. This example, if you see, these are the two different patches which are coming up or getting highlighted. So these are showing some uncorrelated pattern with these other samples which are consistent. So here you see these are 0.2 correlation value. So these samples were further checked for the PCA plot, and I was able to see that there are these samples which are the outliers. So we need to remove these kind of samples because these might hinder the data analysis and may lead to the missing of the significant metabolites. So after your data is sorted, then you can go for statistical analysis, where there are three major steps. So this statistical analysis we had done using the MetaboAnalyst. So once in the MetaboAnalyst, you use it for missing value imputation. So this is the missing value imputation criteria we had used after multiple literature search. However, many papers do show the missing value imputation using LOD as well. So depending on your data quality and depending on how you want to take your data forward, you can choose either of these methods to do the missing value imputation, followed by normalization and ANOVA test. So normalization, in MetaboAnalyst, we have these different set of sample normalization, data transformation, and data scaling parameters which you can use and test for your data, checking whether how your data is distributed along the whole axis. So once that is done, you can select the proper or appropriate parameters here and normalize your data. For us, we had used normalized by median and log transform data. So once that is done, the third step is the ANOVA testing, because we had more than 2 groups which we were comparing. So once that is done, you'll be able to see that these purple dots are the significant metabolites. And once you click on any of these metabolite dots, you'll be able to see the pattern, how it is changing for the different cohorts. So once your significant metabolites are found, then you need to validate these or annotate these with confidence by using the MSI levels. So there are 5 different MSI levels, which is from 1 to 5. 1 is the most confident and 5 is the least confident. So the first one represents the where the MSI level is 1, then the metabolites, which is significant, which you are looking at, is having a synthetic standard available with you, and you run that synthetic standard of known concentration on this under the same settings which you are using for running the samples, and then match the MS2 spectra of the standard with your unknown. So if that matches, then it is a level 1 MSI. Then comes the level 2, which requires the annotation, either a library spectra match from online databases of spectra, that such as MONA and HMDB spectra library, or diagnostic evidence on the basis of the literature search related to your disease, related to the disease you're studying. Then comes the level 3, where these metabolites are tentative. They have the structural information, but the confidence, but the candidates are not having their name provided by the software. So you need to check whether these MS2 level spectra is matching to some of the other related metabolites or not, to give them this level 3 MSI level of identification. Then comes the 4th MSI level, which is for the metabolites which are only having the names, the formula, but not the names. So in this case, the equivocal formula, molecular formula, may result in different spatial arrangement of these molecules. Hence, this is a low confident MSI. And the last one is where nothing is known about the metabolite. So these are few of the pathways. These are few of the tools. So once you have sorted all the significant metabolites on the basis of MSI levels, you have a confident list of metabolites which you can use further for analysis, for the pathway analysis and all. So these are few of the tools which actually deals with the data pre-processing, omics data integration analysis, pathway analysis, and omics-based data analysis. So you can check out these few of the softwares if you want to explore. Then with the significant metabolites which you are having in hand, you can go for the pathway analysis and enrichment analysis, where again we have used the MetaboAnalyst package because this is free and easy to use. So here in the pathway analysis, we were able to see the urea cycle, and even in the enrichment analysis. So here if you see, the urea cycle is the one which is having mapped most of the metabolites in it, followed by the arginine and proline metabolism. So this data is generated on the basis of all the metabolite, all the literatures which are published on COVID-19, which had different metabolites extracted from tissues, then serum and plasma samples. So these all together gave us these pathways which are getting altered in the metabolomics profiling of the COVID patients from the non-healthy to non-severe to severe samples. So this paper was published recently in 2021, followed by another manuscript which we have been working on similar case. So here if you see that we have found, so these are the samples which we have used. These are plasma and swab samples. And here we were able to see that creatine is getting highly upregulated in the severe sample as compared to the non-severe samples. So if you see here, creatine is the precursor molecule for many of the amino acid metabolism. So in this case, alteration or highly upregulation of creatine actually represents the alteration in amino acid metabolism. which we know that is required for the viral replication and survival, followed by this Kino D oxycholic acid glycine conjugate, where it is getting upregulated in the non-severe samples. So this acts on the bile salt metabolism and may lead into the fatty acid metabolism over indirectly. So then comes the propionyl carnitine, which is showing a high upregulation in the severe samples, which represents, so carnitine shuttle is actually used for the synthesis and elongation of the fatty acids, and hence the derivatives of carnitine results in the fatty acid synthesis and metabolism. So as we know that viruses are having fatty acid, uses fatty acid for their survival and replication. So these are few of the good biomarker candidates for prognosis as well as for diagnostic purposes. So this particular manuscript is under review, and this is how this was just a short overview starting from the very beginning of having a sample in hand and to optimize everything starting from sample preparation to the column which you have to use, the solvent system which you have to use, and then how you can analyze the sample to make the sense out of your data to understand the pathobiology of the parasite or the pathogen.
All right, thank you very much, Shalini, for giving this overview. And as we get more time in the afternoon sessions, we will also share with all of you a little bit more, actual details of the experiments and also the troubleshooting which we had to go through, a lot of failures which we had. I think sometimes it's really important to learn those things much more as compared to just seeing what is the major outcome of this work, right? So we will do some of these activities in the hands-on sessions in the afternoon. I'd also like to draw attention to all of your, that please go through this website, xcmsonline.scrip.edu. And as I mentioned, Professor Gary Shudrak, he's one of the pioneers in the metabolomics field. Their group has developed the software XCMS and Metlin database, and they are keep upgrading that. I think it's really important resource for the community. Please do check these out and also read some of these papers from his group and other interesting review articles in this area to really gear up and see how best you can also incorporate metabolomics in your workflow. But unlike proteomics, as I mentioned, that where you start with a sample with no knowledge, prior knowledge about what exactly you want to get from that data, and your data analysis can be very robust to give you some actionable hypothesis. Here you have to have good idea for what is your question which you want to address, and eventually some of the metabolites you have to do a lot of validation before you can confirm that what those metabolites are, because many times the standards are not available, the libraries are not very good. So these are the practical challenges, but I think it's easy to do this experiment, and many times you will get a lot of biological information. You have seen a small glimpse of data what Shalini had shown recently, which we worked on the COVID plasma and swab sample. I'm just showing you two more case studies briefly in the short time. We're working on malaria project and looking at the patients which are having the mild or non-severe symptoms or the severe vivax malaria. An idea was, since we were doing proteomics already, can we also do the serum metabolomics and look for are there signatures of metabolites in these patients. So Sandeep Patel, he's one of the students who did this work. So from the clinical settings, when we get the sample tested with the RDTs, these are malaria patients confirmed with the malaria. Their blood was collected, and similarly we also had the different other controls like febrile control, dengue fever, and these are some IgM tests being done. So after getting all these type of sample, healthy volunteers, malaria patients, and dengue fever, the sample prep was done, and the same sample was analyzed on the mass spectrometer with Q12 LCMS in this case. And also we had a collaboration from ACTRAC with Dr. Murli when we looked at these sample on the Raman spectroscopy as well. So sample prep for the LCMS was similar to what Shalini spoke, and very simple organic solvent methanol based extraction. So around 100 microliter sample was taken. After centrifuge, you take the supernatant, add 1:4 ratios of sample with methanol, incubate that. I think now we have optimized this much more better. So we know that even shorter incubation can be good. And then after incubation at minus 80 degrees, you can centrifuge and collect the supernatant, which is the metabolites which you want to analyze in the LCMSMS. Just to broaden the scope here, NMR is another very important approach technology which can be used for looking at metabolomics, so as a GCMS as well. But somehow the libraries for the compounds with LC-MSMS, there is still largest coverage. So I think in that way, you can really identify the major chunk of metabolites from the LCMS based approach, but you can also look for very specific type of metabolites from the GCMS, and sometimes you will find some very rare metabolites also from the NMR, which you'd have missed out from other technologies. So the workflows remain same. You have to make sure that you are spiking in reserpine or some other internal standard, which show that your chromatography is reproducible. You then look for the total and chromatograms, so you overlay those, analyze your data with the Metabanalyst or other type of software. In this case, in the malaria, then after looking at all the metabolites, we found that various most of the metabolites are actually mapping to the folate biosynthesis or biotin metabolism, and a lot of amino acids were also quite perturbed in these patients. Then Sandeep did validation of these metabolites and found that the level of arginine, tyrosine, isoleucine, those were really quite perturbed in the Vivax malaria patient with more of the severity. They were quite much more significantly, in fact, downregulated in many of these cases. And there's already good biology behind these metabolites, that how arginine conversion with ornithine and urea is quite apparent in the malarial biology. And many of these metabolites level getting depleted were actually quite correlating with the malarial disease pathophysiology as well. While, as I mentioned, that we were looking at the metabolomic signature, we also thought, can we find out with the just Raman peaks, can we distinguish that how different healthy versus malaria is, and how different healthy versus dengue is, and how different malaria versus dengue is, right? So this was again, a collaborative work where Dr. Murli and his team provided their expertise and measured the same samples. And it was very interesting. Of course, it was not my expertise, but through their work, we were very mesmerized to see that how easily Raman could actually detect and segregate the healthy versus malaria or healthy versus dengue samples. And that was a really powerful way to see, like, based on these metabolite, specific spectral differences, Raman will not tell you that what exactly these metabolite peaks are, but it is just based on these spectral differences, they are able to segregate these patient, which was quite powerful. So, there's always need to look into complementary approaches. In this case, we looked into which of the Raman peaks, then are there possibilities of which metabolites they are going to govern. And we also looked at how well we also identified in our metabolomics work from the mass spec based analysis, and then try to do those correlation, which you can see many of the times. It was actually quite well correlated, different amino acids, their levels and other metabolites. They are quite similar coming from the Raman peak as well as the LCMS based work. And that actually led to very good segregation of malaria, dengue and healthy control in this kind of PLSDA plot. So this work was really good start for us to think about metabolomics as a powerful way to distinguish different type of diseases. On a side, another collaborative work with IIT Guwahati and some of our colleagues who work in the algal biology here. We looked into the metabolomics profile of chlorella algae and tried to look at how in different nitrogen limited conditions we can look into the metabolomic signatures of these samples. So again, these are the control or the mild, moderate, severe nitrogen limitation conditions. So now the patients got changed with the algal samples, which are having the different type of nitrogen starvation conditions in chlorella, and sample extraction methods remain same. I think the beautiful part of some of these omics technologies are there's no boundaries of the systems. You can apply the same instrument, you can apply most of the methodology same. except you have to know what questions you are addressing and what the data analysis should be there. But most of the technologies are quite generic. In this case, we injected caffeine as the internal standard. Dr. Vinita Rai, a postdoc in the lab, she did this work, and this just got accepted for publication, this work. So methanol, chloroform, same extraction method was used here. And then she has already done proteomics earlier and published that work. Now the same sample, she investigated the metabolomics. An idea was, can we now integrate these and look for the the nitrogen limited conditions and nitrogen severity conditions, how they are different in the this nitrogen limited conditions for the chlorella. So metabolomics workflows and the data analysis quite similar. What we have been speaking, you have to look at the internal standard, that variability across the sample should be less than 20% for the percentage CV. It was less than 15% in this case here. We compared the 0, 40 hours, 88 hours, 120 hours, and with the PLSD, in fact, she was able to segregate all these 4 nitrogen conditions quite well, and showed the different metabolites are actually regulating this activity overall in the different nitrogen limitation severity conditions. Of course, with the different analysis of looking at the structure of these metabolites, finally she was able to narrow down few metabolites which are actually quite important in the triacyl glyceride metabolism, and those then we try to put together the heat map format with the metaboanalyst. And as you can see, there was quite distinct signature from control versus the nitrogen limitation conditions. And within those, the severe is actually showing the several metabolites from the diterpenoids and other glycosides, which are quite different than the control and mild conditions. So based on this entire work, she is able to also integrate the proteomics data and able to come up with the possible mechanism of what is governing this nitrogen starvation condition in chlorella, and especially the central carbon metabolism, nitrogen metabolism, and the triacyl glycerol metabolism. Those are quite a bit, involved in the chlorella nitrogen limited conditions. So again, I'm now into the, quite late in the other talk time. So I'm stopping it here. I hope, we are able to convey you that metabolomics is quite easy to perform, quite important to perform, but still the data analysis is quite challenging. If we can do that, it can be very informative. In case of malaria case, we were able to find several metabolites, different amino acids, which are quite relevant in the severe vivax malaria disease biology. And also recently in the chlorella algae, we were able to find that how triacyl glycerol biosynthesis and central carbon metabolism can be perturbed when you have the nitrogen starvation condition in these algae. So, and just now Shalini spoke to you about the COVID cases and how the metabolic fluxes can be very different in the mild and severe patients when we analyze their swab and plasma samples. So that's all for this presentation. Thank you very much for starting the day with the metabolomics basic workflow. I'm sure you will have several queries in mind. Please start posting those in the chat box as we start getting ready for the next talk. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.